Conversation with a Geographer. I'm Mike DeVivo, professor of geography at Grand Rapids Community College, and today we're very fortunate to have Dr. Jenny Zorn, a retired provost from CSU Bakersfield and also professor of geography at CSU San Bernardino. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm honored that you wanted to have a chat with me.
Well, Jenny, you have really done quite a bit for geography, especially academic geography in California. And I really wanted to chat with you about it because there needs to be more of a record made about the contributions that geographers have made to the study of our discipline in California. Can you talk for a few moments about what might have inspired you to pursue geography? I mean, you went to a liberal arts college early on.
Yes.
And as a child, did anything spark your interest in geography?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents they were big campers, and they took us on a lot of trips. We lived in Ohio, and we took a cross-country trip to California a couple of times in my childhood. 6 weeks, 4 weeks, we just went out and explored and saw a lot. And so I think those were kind of the seeds of my interest in geography and exploration and seeing the world out there. So I think that's what got me started. How I became a geography major, I went to Florida to school, a small college called Flagler College.
And you were an athlete.
I played volleyball and basketball back when Title IX was just starting to come into play, and we had that college was a very small college, but we dominated all the big schools. We would beat the Miami and FSU and Florida.
Wow.
And it was a school of 800 students, so it was really well known for its women's sports at that time. So that's what took me down there, and then I took a geography class from a geography professor to sort of as an elective, and loved it. Took another pretty soon I was a geography major. I just liked Dr. Kistler, and I liked his what he brought to the classroom and how he excited me, I guess, to get into geography. So then I became a geography major, and then went back to Ohio State for my graduate degrees.
And would you comment on any of the professors that you worked with or may have inspired you at Ohio State?
Yeah, at Ohio State in my master's program, Randy Smith was an urban geographer, and so I worked with him. He was my advisor. Randy also was the coordinator for the Ohio Geography Alliance that National Geographic Society had. So he also inspired me to get into that part of geography, of working with K through 12 teachers. Of course, that didn't really come until later, until I got out to California, but he was inspiring in that. And then I worked a couple years for the Ohio Department of Development in their Office of Research it's a data center, U.S. data center for the census. And so we disseminated data, and it was kind of there where I started. I was providing data to some people on women's wages.
Right.
I don't know what their topic was, but and I saw those data as I was playing with them, and I thought that really intrigued me, and so I went back to get my PhD at Ohio State, and did my work then. That my research was focused on gender wage gaps.
Sure.
Force. And there I worked with Emilio Cassetti, and he was a big quantitative geographer who also was very good at mentoring and guiding me to get the dissertation and to move into being an academic.
Well, it's really interesting. You go to this liberal arts college that's known really for its Title IX programs with women's sports, and then you're doing gender wage gaps for your PhD at Ohio State, and you're working with individuals that are encouraging you to move on in this direction. Would you care to comment on some of your findings from that time, which is a long time ago, um, but it was really at a time when there really wasn't much research done concerning gender wage gaps in the U.S.
That's absolutely true. In fact, I just saw just the other day. I saw the latest map of the U.S. and they had by state what the gender wage gap was. And it's when I was doing this research, it was back in the '80s. It was about 75 cents or 80 cents on the dollar that women made, and it really hasn't improved that much. I mean, we're over 80 cents now, but it's still, there are states where it's still very low. It depends on what the main drivers of the economy is in those states. There are a variety of factors that can come into play, but I looked at it at metropolitan level areas, and I looked at, I created a model where you could put individual characteristics in: your age, how many years you've been in the labor force, a woman, your race, those sorts of things, and then plug in the metropolitan area that you were in, and the data for that. What's the economic makeup of that community, and then you could get an expected or an estimated income for the woman, and then you just take the model and just plug it in, just change female to male and see what happens. And you could see in an individual metro area how a man with an individual man could make more than, estimated to make more than what a woman could make. So that was the sort of thing that I worked on early on.
Well, it's certainly interesting research, and it still needs to be continued, no doubt.
Yeah.
So you went from Ohio State to California, and you first went to San Bernardino.
I did, yeah.
And what were you charged with teaching when you went to CSU San Bernardino?
Well, one of the reasons I was attracted to this particular position was because they were looking for someone who was going to do some work in gender research. It was an all-male department, an all-white male department, and they really wanted to diversify. We're in Southern California. We are, 60% of the students are female, and also diversity in terms of Latinas, and so they really wanted to diversify beyond what they were. And so I really credit them with working hard to support me and get me there, and to support me once I got there.
Sure. Incidentally, I get the impression that most of the CSU institutions really were dominated by men. There were very few female faculty in the geography programs anyway. Is that your impression?
It certainly was, and it's changed now. That department at San Bernardino is majority women now. I think there are, I think it's 6 females and 2 males now, or something like that, maybe 5-3 or something. So there's some really terrific female faculty members that are there, and the male faculty members that have supported them to get to that point. So, yeah.
So you were brought in, and you were looking at gender disparities. You were sent, really, or shouldn't say sent, but you were perhaps recruited somewhat to attract female students to geography.
Yes, I think so.
And so what courses were you teaching that were captivating some of these students?
I taught a gender geography class that I created. I also taught others political geography, research methods, and other courses. There's one that they had at the time in their upper GE requirements, their general ed requirements, it was called Perspectives on Gender. And it was a popular course in the GE, and it was a large lecture, and the perspectives were they would have a team. It was team taught with 3 different faculty members, one from the social sciences, so that was me, somebody from the biological sciences, and then someone from the arts and humanities, and we would team teach this. It was a large lecture class, and so that was one that I was very happy to be a part of. It was challenging because a lot of students were in there just to meet their GE requirement, and they weren't interested in it per se. They were sort of forced to be in there in their minds, and so we had a lot of really healthy, good discussions, and it gave me an idea of how you talk through issues and listen to all sides of issues when you're in a group of people, and that are diverse, that have diverse opinions. And you know, you've got all different kind of majors in that class, and they are. And I think it's very important. It's a lesson I think we need to learn today of how we have those communications and that discourse in our society without yelling at each other.
Well, certainly engaging in civil discourse is something that we experience a lot of shortcomings in our society today. It's
Yeah.
and in academia in many ways as well.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd like to ask you about some of the male students you had in your classes. Were they particularly challenging, or were many receptive to addressing these issues associated with the matters of inequity?
Yep. I think it was a mixed bag in many regards, but I think I would say at the heart of everybody was, if there was an inequality, you know, they got it. They had wives or sisters or mothers, and so they were supportive of it. I think it was, I think for some it was just, don't male bash. Don't. I'm not the person that did this to you, and so they would take it personal sometimes. I think the step that you needed to try and make is to show them that it was about systematic issues, that it wasn't an individual person. Yeah, you know, some were in there saying, I make less than my wife, or, you know, I've been discriminated against in different ways in their life. And yes, that's true at the individual level, but trying to look at it sort of in a systematic, bigger picture was what we were trying to have a conversation about.
Oh, that's really a profound bit of advice, I think, because I think on occasion there are those who are feel that they are targeted, and we do seek to establish dialogue, respectful dialogue, when it comes to some of these very important issues that are important for us to debate.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about your work in the different geographical organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done work in each of them, in the California Geographical Society, for example. Would you care to comment on some of that work?
I loved those organizations, still do. I was president of California Geographical Society. I was president of Association of Pacific Coast Geographers. I was secretary on the AAG's national board. So I've been active in all the geography organizations. And in addition, National Geographic Society, I worked a lot with K through 12 teachers. I really I especially enjoy those CGS and APCG meetings because they are regional, they're local. You go on fabulous field trips. It's how I got to see and know California. Not being born and raised here, it gave me the opportunity to see a lot of California that I'd not seen, and of course the rest of the Western region too. So the field trips were fabulous, but also what was fabulous was to see the mentorship of students that could take place there. At the CGS meetings, there are a lot of community colleges that send their students to those meetings. And a lot of the CSUs receive those transfer students. And so the relationships between the faculty and CSU and the community colleges was very important. And I can remember sitting in a session where a fabulous community college student gave his presentation at the meeting. And literally, there were CSU faculty from Northridge, from San Bernardino, and we were sort of fighting over this student. We're asking him questions, trying to recruit him to come to our program. And so it was really good to see those students. And likewise, the other direction from CSU to UCs and to them, to see those students that were getting their bachelor's degrees at a CSU and those graduate programs were recruiting their students there at those meetings. They would see them give presentations in their research. They knew their faculty members, and so there was a lot of interplay between them that I think was really fascinating and so supportive for those students. Some of those students, they've never been to a conference before. They've never traveled like that to a professional conference, and for them to have that sort of reinforcement that what they were doing was good. Was very helpful to them. And the regional meetings mean a lot in terms of that sort of development, but also for the faculty. You saw faculty that I would have never known. I knew faculty members in all of the CSUs, every CSU that had a geography program. I knew them then as a result of that. And so it created a supportive network for me too. And I say the CSUs, it's also, private institutions were also are very much a part of those organizations too, and the APCG and the CGS. So, there's just a lot of mentorship, a lot of support for women. Those organizations both have travel grants for women to come to the meetings, and they have a long history of supporting women. And going beyond that, and now they have travel scholarships for the Indigenous students, Black, Asian, all different sort of demographic groups.
The California Geographical Society and the Association of Pacific Coast Geographers are wonderful organizations. I have a great affinity for the CGS. I've been to many of the meetings in the last 20 years. And I find that, as you've indicated, the mentoring of students is great. It's a friendly conference. There are wonderful field trips. And the APCG is good as well. But again, it's over a much wider area. I guess one advantage that you all have in the CSU system is that you do have a strong relationship with the community colleges already, especially with regard to geography. I bet half of your geography majors come from community colleges. Is that right? Or
Absolutely true. A lot of our community college faculty teach at the CSU also. So we would have San Bernardino Valley College had a faculty member, and he would teach our Intro to Physical Geography up at the campus too. We would do field trips together, bring their students up and do field trips with our students. And so there's a lot of kinship there between them. And that's, yes, the CSU does get a lot of transfer students in general from the community colleges because it's such a strong network. But geography in particular, geography is not a major that typically a freshman comes in and declares a geography major. They either take those intro courses from the faculty there at the CSU and like me, got sort of turned on to it and liked the professor and took more courses from him, that you kind of get your groupies of people who want to take your courses. And so you get majors that way, but also from the community colleges for sure is the biggest feeder that brings us our majors.
Mm-hmm. So you went from being a faculty member to going into administrative leadership. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on what made you decide to make that move? And you had an exemplary career as a leader. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I saw that I could make a difference. I wanted to have a bigger make a bigger imprint, and have wider influence on how higher education was operating. So I became an associate dean and then an associate provost and then provost. Was provost at a couple of institutions in the CSU. And that's the vice president of academic affairs. And so I really saw the need to guide the academic programs and support faculty. I really appreciated the administrators I saw and worked with who were truly faculty supportive administrators. Of course, it's a given you've got to be student centered and student supportive. That's just who we are. That's what our job is. And but I really wanted to support those faculty members from regulations or from things that were just coming down that I just wanted to sort of protect them from and deal with them and protect them from the things that weren't necessary for them to be doing in a classroom. And so they could go on about their business of teaching their students. So that was kind of my driving factor that made me really want to get into administration.
Well, if you have a great career as a faculty member and you go into administration in the same system, in the CSU system, certainly you're well positioned to be a good advocate for faculty. Unfortunately, as you're aware, there are many in administrative leadership that don't look at things the same way you do,
Yeah,
and that can be a challenge.
it
Wh-
really is, and I must say now that I've been retired 3 years, I guess almost 4 now, and I'm a bit reflective about leadership in academia, and it is disappointing to me to see the weak leadership that can rise to the top, and what's driving that is more the political. It's more political that comes down from the boards or from outside influences. And people that really don't understand academia, they don't understand academic freedom, they don't understand what we're trying to accomplish and how higher ed is a good that we all need to have. It's not just about my personal investment in myself and getting a degree so that I can make more money or develop a career. It is a common good that I want to live in a society where people are educated. I want my neighbor to go out and be a doctor. I want my neighbor to be, a good nurse. Or so I need everybody to be educated to the maximum amount that they have the potential to be. And so, I feel like sometimes we get caught up in the problems with budgets. The states really are not funding higher education in the way they used to, and so what that means is those investments have decreased. That means tuition has had to increase, and so now we have higher tuition costs for the students. And I think we need to reinvest in higher education, and we just haven't done that. And so I feel like sometimes then what you get is you get leaders who are driven by different goals than what I would aspire to.
Indeed, and it's certainly very unfortunate because, like you, I would argue that higher education and the achievement of higher education is a public good. It's a
Mhm.
good. It's good for society overall. Unfortunately, there appears to be an anti-higher education movement that reduces the impact of educators and the funding of higher education overall. It's really a sad state of affairs in so many ways. And the questionable leaders that you talk about, I would argue, are oftentimes characterized by being transactional in their behaviors as opposed to being transformational, seeking
Right.
to elevate the status of the entire organization and the achievement of goals in the organization, which should be the success of students. And the success of students is driven by successful faculty.
That's right.
I have just a few more questions for you, and these relate to your thoughts on your role as an academic geographer in administration, in higher education administration. Would you comment on that, please? How has your role as a geographer really been different than another leader in higher education? And I say this within the context of you being one of relatively few academic geographers that have really gone to higher levels in higher education. I mean, David Ward at Wisconsin, Angel at Clark. There are a few, Nellis, but 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 there is something to be said about a geographer in those positions. Would you care to comment?
Yeah, I think having a geography background and a geographic approach has been helpful. I think our training teaches us to look at multiple issues when we're looking at whatever we're researching. We have physical geography and human geography that we take into account when we're looking at issues. So I think we have a broader perspective and able to integrate different disciplines into our analysis. And so we aren't just data crunchers who just look at numbers. We understand the social and the psychological issues that are at hand. So I think we don't get so pigeonholed. We can understand, and I think that's generally a social scientist can do that too, in ways that others don't. Or can, but we've been trained to be able to see the multiple sides and to understand there are multiple factors at play on something, and so I think that was helpful to me. I will say that oftentimes, when I introduce myself and say I'm a geographer, they say, "Oh, I loved geology. I love to get out there and look at," and it's. Sometimes it's not commonly, oh, you can major in that, oh, all the state capitals then. Those sort of simplistic understandings or lack of understanding of what geography is disheartening at times, but I think that also means it's important that I continue putting that cloak on and introducing myself as a geographer. And even though I was an administrator or whatever, I was oftentimes the only geographer at administrative groups, and so it was. I was always proud to say I was a geographer, and so I think it is very important to remain visible as a geographer as you move into other aspects of higher education.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's important that we do have academic geographers in these positions, partly because we're an eclectic field and we can engage in dialogue with individuals from all kinds of disciplines, as well as local community. Lastly, with just about a minute to go, I'm going to ask you if you would just reflect upon your career and ponder some advice you might give to fellow colleagues in geography today and students interested in pursuing geography. Do you have any pearls of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, I don't know how many pearls I have. I would say some things I would do certainly live by is that perseverance is so very important. I have known some of the smartest people I've ever known, and they did not persevere through maybe getting a degree or to get the job they wanted. They didn't have that. They were brilliant, but they didn't have perseverance. And yet I saw other people who persevered and they did not have quite that sort of brilliance and I put myself in that category. Sure, I was smart and sure I could handle things, but perseverance is really what got me through getting a PhD and making it through the academic circles for promotion and all that. You just, in some of my sort of most frustrating times, some of my darkest moments, I just you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't know where your path is going to take you. I would never have imagined that my path would have taken me where I am today, and so you just keep going down the path. You may take a left turn and a right turn here and there, but just keep going down the path. Nothing is forever, and so if you're in a job that you don't like, it's not what you're trying to accomplish, figure out what you can get from that job and that experience, and keep moving forward. It won't last forever. You can, I always thought I can take any job and, take it for a year. And if I don't like it, then I'll just move on to something else. I always felt like if it wasn't the end to make this decision and to be where I am now. Things will change, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. And so they don't remain constant. So just keep walking down the path. It's difficult sometimes, and I've had my hard and challenging moments for sure. But just keep at it.
Thank you so much for sharing that bit of advice, Jenny. Really appreciate you spending time with us today. And
well, I very much appreciate it. And Mike, that's how I met you, was those CGS meetings, and got to know you. You were a regular at the CGS meetings, and it's those kind of colleagues that and friendships that you develop that are really that really made my career what it is.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in Los Angeles, I hope, in April.
Yes, it's coming soon.
Okay. Well, this concludes today's session of Conversation with the Geographer. Thank you so much.